Hey guys, I'm Erin and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm bringing you my June TBR. So this TBR is going to be a little bit different than normal, which now that I say that, I think I've said that for every TBR I've made. So really, what is normal? Is there even a normal? I don't know, but this one is definitely even more different than sort of normal because it is a Readathon TBR, and so the Shelf Space Discord is hosting a month-long competitive points-based Readathon based on the Greek gods, and so there's 16 gods and goddesses chosen, and each has a prompt, and so that's what this TBR will be. It'll be those 16 prompts. And so if you're interested in joining this Shelf Space Readathon, I will link the Discord below where you can join and have fun with us. And so the sign up ends on May 24th, I believe, which I know is only a few days after this video. So this TBR is also a little chaotic because there's 16 prompts, but I ended up putting more than 16 books on this TBR because, as I've said, I don't usually like planning an entire month of reading because it feels a little too restrictive. I like having a little bit of mood reading thrown in with planned books. And when I originally made the TBR, I had 14 of the 16 books were SFF books, and I also enjoy throwing in other genres because I think that helps keep me out of reading slump or genre burnout. So I ended up throwing in a bonus non-SFF option for a couple of the prompts, and so I think that'll allow me to still stick to my TBR, Readathon TBR, to earn those points while allowing for a little bit of mood reading with a couple options for some of those. So that being said, let's get started with the first prompt. So first up, we have Zeus with the prompt features a kingdom or patriarchy. So I've chosen The Midnight Bargain by C.L. Polk. This one is more the patriarchy side of that prompt and is about a girl in this world where once women get married, they get these collars put on that stops their magic powers. And she is on a mission to become the first female mage in her family and kind of runs into some issues along the way with kind of her duty to her family and her desires. And so I'm very excited for this one. I had intended to read this earlier this year, and then I got in a weird slump and ended up not, so I definitely want to pick this up next month. The next prompt is Poseidon, book with water, and so for this I've chosen Summer of Salt by Katrina Leno. This is a book club book that I'm reading in June, and this is more of kind of a magical realism contemporary book, I believe, and I think it follows this family where magic has been passed down between the women, and they live on this island, and there's the water aspect, surrounded by water, and the kind of like townspeople, it's like the open secret of the town that this family is witches, and the townspeople don't really talk about it, but they'll still go to them if they need solutions. And so that's kind of all I know about this book because I've heard of it but hadn't really been actively interested, but it was our book club pick, so I decided I would give it a shot. Next is Hades, which is a book with an undead or ghost theme, and for that I've chosen Alatsui by Darcy Littlebadger. This book I've heard nothing but glowing praise of from many booktubers who I've seen read it, and this is a young adult book about a indigenous girl who has the power to, I think, summon ghosts. I think ghosts of animals, but maybe it's just any ghosts. So I am excited to pick this one up and read it this month. Next, for the Hestia prompt, which is a found family trope, I am reading The House on the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. Again, this is another one that I've not actually heard that much about what the plot's about. I've just heard so many people love it. And I do think I know it's about some kind of like school for orphanage for like lost children, and about the owner or person who runs it, the relationship with the kids, as well as the other guy who's there for some reason. I think he's a caseworker, but mostly what I've heard is just it's amazing and it's a hug in a book, and my best friend loves it and so many booktubers love it that I'm gonna pick it up. Next is Hephaestus with fire on the cover or in the title, and I've chosen The Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Booley. This is a young adult murder mystery, maybe not murder, young adult mystery, and I've just heard great things from booktubers whose opinions I generally trust, and so I usually tend not to look up extensive info on mysteries before I pick them up, and so I'm kind of just excited to read it going in kind of blind. Next, for Dionysus for red or white cover, this is one of the ones I have two options for. The first is The Wolf and the Whale by Jordana Max Brodsky. This book blends Inuit with Norse mythology, and I think that sounds really cool. And it's about this character who is born with, I think, the soul of like a wolf in them, and they are on a mission to, I think, save their tribe or their family, and they end up banding together with this Viking and learning about their culture, and they end up working together in some way. Really what you've learned so far is this TBR is mostly books that I only know a little bit about what they're about. So this is my SFF pick for this prompt, and then I have a romance pick as well, and that is Dreaming of You by Lisa Kleypas. This is a book that's been hyped a ton on the romance podcast I listen to, Fated Mates, and they always talk about how much they love the hero in this book, and so I'm kind of picking up based on that alone. And I've heard good things about Lisa Kleypas in general with her book, so this will be my first one by her, and I'm excited to pick this one up next month, potentially. Next, for Hermes, a book involving travel, vacation, or quest. So I have 2 books for this one again, and the first is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This one I'm very excited for because I love The Martian, and so that's kind of, when I heard he had a new sci-fi book coming out this year, I was like, so, done, we're good. So this one I'm assuming has space travel of some amount in it, which is why I put it on this prompt, and it's about this person who's in space who is, like, humanity is down counting on them to, like, save Earth or something, and he wakes up with no memory of what he's doing. And so I am very excited to pick this up. Next for this prompt, I have a romance pick, and that is The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary. This book comes out in June, and I'm very excited for it, and I'm baseline interested because of the author. I've enjoyed both of her other books, and so I heard she had a new one, and I was like, done, so I'll read it. But it's about this girl and her sister who are road tripping to a wedding, and on the road they get in a wreck with the main character's ex, and they end up having to carpool together to this wedding. So I'm excited. Sounds like some kind of, like, second chance / maybe enemies to lovers, you know, depending on how their breakup had gone, and some forced proximity and road tripping. So we love all of that. Next is Artemis with Moon or Night on cover or in title, and so my fantasy pick for this one is Last Song Before Night by Alana C. Meyer. This book takes place in a world where there used to be magic that was using like poetry and music, but it was wiped from the world by a pandemic that ravaged the world, and now the pandemic has returned, and so the talented musicians are banding together to, I guess, find this birthright magic to save the world. And so the idea of a music-based magic system sounds awesome to me. And then I have a non-SFF pick for this one as well, and that is The Night Swim by Megan Goldwyn, which is a thriller. This is about this is about a woman who has a true crime podcast, and in doing her new season of her podcast, she has been brought to this small town to investigate this case, and it's getting wrapped up in the small town drama with it, and I've heard good things about this one, and I'm excited to pick this one up. Next prompt is Apollo, which is a non-traditional format such as verse, graphic novel, mixed media, or novella. So I decided to go with a novella, and for this one I am planning on reading When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain by Niveau. This is the sequel to Empress of Salt and Fortune, and I just thought it was fun, and this one I think is kind of more of like a companion where it's like just like another adventure in this cleric story more than like direct story sequel. And I really liked the cleric character, the main character in the first one, and so I'm just excited to kind of follow her story more in this world. The world was kind of hinted at, but in 90 pages you can only do so much, so I'm excited to see more of this world, especially since I think it was just announced that Niveau is contracted to do like 3 more in this series, so definitely excited for that. Next prompt was Aries, a military-centered fantasy or sci-fi, and I chose Fireborn by Rosaria Munda. I mean, this has been hyped a bunch by Elliot Brooks, and then Alan read it and loved it, and honestly, if Alan read a YA fantasy and loved it, that just put it all the way up on my TBR. I was interested beforehand because I thought it sounded good, but when he loved it, I was like, we gotta read this. We got to read this. So I was able to get it for cheap on a daily deal on my ebook, or my e-reader, so I am excited to pick this one up. Next is Aphrodite, book with a beautiful cover, and this is another one I have 2 options for. So my fantasy pick for this prompt is All the Tides of Fate by Adeline Grace. This is the sequel to All the Stars and Teeth. This is a young adult fantasy series about a girl who is supposed to be the next heir to be this kind of master of soul magic, and so on the day she's supposed to kind of prove her mastery of magic to the people to like be officially named the heir. Something goes wrong and it doesn't happen, and so she has to flee. So she flees with this pirate around this island nation on a mission to prove herself worthy of the throne, and I thought it was a really fun kind of piratey fantasy, and I'm excited to read this second book in this duology. And then for a non-SFF pick, I have The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. This is about an apothecary who specializes in selling poisons to women to kill their husbands, I think. And I just thought that sounds really interesting. And that's kind of all I know about it, because I was kind of... And so yeah, I'm excited to pick this one up. Next we have Hera, which a book featuring a queendom or matriarchy, and so I've chosen The Queen of Sorrow by Sarah Beth Durst. This is the last book in the Queens of Renthia series, which is a world with that is a queendom, and it takes place in a world where all of the elements of nature have these spirit manifestations that hate humans and try to kill them, but the queen keeps them in check with her spirit powers. So I liked the first one and then really liked the second, so I'm definitely excited for the third one, but I am a little nervous because I have heard the third one is not as good as the first two, so we'll see how it goes. Next we have Demeter, which is a book with food on the cover, which in the Shelf Space Discord, this has been the hardest prompt to find a book for. But I've chosen just a romance book for this one, and that is Well Met by Jen DeLuca, which if you look has a little turkey leg on it. So there you go, there's your food. And so this is a romance that takes place at a Renaissance festival. And that sounds awesome because I love the Renaissance festival, so very excited to read this one. Next is Athena, which is a book with political intrigue, and so I have chosen this chunker, The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This book is very large, and I've had it on my shelf a while, and I keep not picking it up because of that. But I decided to pick it up next month, hopefully for this readathon, and this is about a queen who's been trying to conceive her heir in this queendom, and the lady-in-waiting who's been secretly protecting her with magic, and then I think there's a third character, something to do with dragons, I think. And I've also heard that there is a sapphic romance in this, so I'm excited to pick this one up. Next is Eos, which is read a book that is the first in the series, and this is the prompt with the highest probability of things being changed because I have so many book ones in the series on my shelf right now, and it's really just going to depend on how I'm feeling in the moment. But right now, if I had to choose right now which one to read, this is the one I'm currently vibing with, and that is Torn by Rowena Miller. This is a fantasy trilogy that's kind of inspired by the French Revolution about a girl who has magical abilities through sewing clothing and like embroidering spells. I think that sounds pretty awesome. So this is my current pick, but this is the one that's most likely to change if we're being honest. And now we have our last prompt, which is Nyx, read a book that is the last in the series, and I once again have two options for this one. First is Drowned Country by Emily Tesh. This is the sequel to Silver in the Wood, which is a novella series about this magical, mystical wood and the kind of mysterious, kind of tall tale woodsman who lives in it, and his relationship with the new owner of the manor and this woods. So this just continues their story, and I'm excited to read it. And my romance pick for this one is Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is the last book in the Brown Sisters trilogy, and I've heard glowing things about this one. So Eve has not been my favorite in her appearances in the first two books, but I've heard such great things about this book that I'm still really hyped for it. So this is about Eve Brown, who needs to kind of get her life together because she's kind of the flighty sister who's been like jumping around between jobs, and so she ends up getting a job at a just a B&B, bread and breakfast, as a chef. And her romance, I believe, is with the owner of the bed and breakfast, who's a very kind of uptight, type A, everything in its place, which is kind of the polar opposite of her flighty personality. So that was the last book on this very lengthy TBR. So if you've read any of these books, let me know what you think, and let me know what books you're planning on reading if you're doing this readathon, and I will talk to you in my next video.